meditation. And I start just maybe a minute of breathing meditation. Once again, visualize an embodiment of all the enlightenment qualities. As well as a manifestation of all the enlightened beings in the space in front of you, in the form of worshiping me. In that way, representing Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And also think that you're surrounded by all sentient beings. Those who have a hard time with you either dislike or may dislike you right in front of you. And then thinking back in the past lives, I have been so close to us endless times. Can you have been as our parent, best friend, child, showing us so much kindness and so much love. As far as sacrificing their happiness or even their life. So that no one is really a stranger. Just a forgotten loved one. even now, their existence is important for our well-being and spiritual well-being. It's everything we know, or at least contributed to learning that. Even indirectly. You're alive and healthy because of it. So how can we neglect them now? We have found methods of helping ourselves and them. So, then I affectionate love, that feeling of closeness towards every living being, mind that deep affections and regarding sentient beings. It's endearing, it's lovely. That affectionate love then gives way to great compassion, focusing on all sentient beings and sincerely wishing them to be free from not just suffering, but all the symbolic experiences along their causes. And wishing personally to help them overcome all these. which then gives way to the altruistic result that is now determined based on our affectionate love and great compassion to do all we can, no matter how long it may take and how difficult it may be. To have sentient beings overcome all the dissatisfactory experiences together with their causes. Since that is only possible once we become a Buddha ourselves, once we attain the ignition state of an enlightened being, let's generate the mind of enlightenment that is rooted in great compassion, aspiring to attain Buddhahood, in order then to be able most effectively to help every living being, every sentient being. Try to really feel that from the depth of your heart. And without letting go of bodhicitta, let's recite a prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Ascending. By the truth of the beings created by practicing generosity in the other professions, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. By the two accumulations created by practicing generosity in the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. By the two accumulations created by practicing generosity in the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. So it's actually a good idea to start your day with this kind of practice. Now, of course, you can shorten it. This is a little longer. We did there for 15 minutes, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. The faster you may go through the different stages. But you see how I combined one technique, which actually, when we say 6 causes and 1 effect, the 3 of them are affectionate love, great compassion, and the altruistic result, the effect is Buddhist. And if the first 3 are becoming aware all sentient beings have their own mother, becoming aware of their kindness, the kindness they have shown us, and of course the wish to repay the kindness. So if those 3 first, then affection, love, and so forth, and bodhicitta. With equalizing and exchanging self for others, those last 3 effects of causes are exactly the same. So you go again from equalizing and exchanging self for others, then affection and love, great compassion, the altruistic attitude, the altruistic resolve, and Bodhicitta. Now, usually the texts recommend to combine the two, which we've been doing, remembering them, holding really, really close to us, and then whichever way you want to equalize, you can do a whole practice, equalizing and exchange yourself for others, reflecting on the disadvantages of self-centeredness, or first of all, identifying self-centeredness, recognizing its disadvantages, recognizing the advantages of cherishing others, then understanding that ourselves and others are equal, and now exchanging in the self, not becoming them, but changing our focus on not just my, me, my happiness, but instead others. So it's not like you become them, but your focus changes. And when we reflect on being equal, remember sentient beings are equal, we need them, they're equally important for our own survival, for our own happiness, as we are ourselves, as we are ourselves. For instance, in terms of getting all the food we need, the microorganisms that keep us healthy, the bees that pollinate the food, and so on and so forth. So directly and indirectly, how they in some way involved in our survival. They're involved in learning what we need to know to survive and to be healthy, well, and comfortable. Then, on top of that, spiritually, we need sentient beings. They're equally important. Of course, we also need to do the practices, control our mind, subdue our mind. But if it wasn't for others, we wouldn't be able to practice the Dharma effectively. Again, in terms of spiritually developing the other sentient beings. Plus, in terms of, what's the other point? What we have in common with them, just like us, they equally want to be happy and don't want to suffer. And anyway, even on an ultimate level, they lack inherent existence. They don't exist in and of itself as we don't. And I and others is just a matter of perspective. If you can do all this in one sitting, that would be great. But you can just pick and choose the bits. And maybe one day, one part of equalizing and changing yourself for others, because it involves a lot of steps. At other times, you do it differently. But once you've done both, remembering our past relationships with others, plus equalizing and exchanging yourself for others to some degree, then you move on to affection and love, great compassion, the altruistic resolve, and Buddhist. It sounds really complicated, but it isn't if you're a little familiar with it. When you start your day with that, then that influences your activities, everything. You can actually, as long as you start your day with it, and remember every now and then, every practice that you do, somehow influenced by that mind, that will lead to virtue. Anything you do becomes virtuous. Now, this is something I haven't really mentioned yet. There's something called conjoining two minds. Conjoining two minds. It sounds a little odd. We're not literally conjoining them. It's the translation, the English translation of the Tibetan term, but it's more like causing one mind to influence another. Influencing is much more influencing. Now, there are two ways in which that happens. Directly influencing and indirectly. Directly just means both minds are there at the same time. They run parallel and they influence each other because they're both present. To give you an example, there are three types of compassion, three types of great compassion. I mentioned that before. One is just simple compassion, where with that no other mind running parallel or being active at the time the great compassion is active. That's the first type of great compassion. Again, great because not only because of focusing on all sentient beings, but also wanting them to be free from the three types of suffering. Plus, if you can manage, I haven't done that so far in the morning, but also any kind of limitation. I talked about it yesterday, not just the three types of suffering, but any limitation, anything that prevents sentient beings from becoming Buddhas. So focusing on that and wanting to help sentient beings to achieve that, that would be great compassion. But if there's no other mind active at that time, it's called mere or compassion that focuses just on sentient beings. But then there's also another type that's called compassion that observes phenomena and compassion that observes the unobservable. So that means that first of all, you focus on sentient beings before you generate compassion. You focus on sentient beings and then generate the mind that understands sentient beings are constantly changing. For that, you must, of course, realize, understood sentient beings are constantly changing. It's not that easy. I mean, being convinced of the impermanence of sentient beings, that they change moment by moment, goes first. But at some point, you conceptually know all sentient beings are constantly changing. So you generate that understanding, that mind that realizes, that's just focused on, not just focused on the impermanence of sentient beings, but also knows it. And then without letting go of that mind, you generate great compassion. That is very difficult. You need an incredible amount of attention that is focused on both, on the realization of the impermanence of sentient beings and of the mind that runs parallel to it, which is focusing on all sentient beings, may they be free from suffering, and may I be able to, so on. So you can see, to alternate between them, we could do that right now, maybe. No, we don't realize that permanence yet, but anyway, we could basically do that, but to have them run at the same time is difficult, but it's possible. The more advanced you are, the easier it gets, and then they directly influence each other. The impermanence of sentient beings influences great compassion influences the understanding of impermanence. And instead of impermanence, you could use something else. All sentient beings lack a self-sufficient, substantially existent I. So any understanding other than emptiness, anything you generate that realization, and then you generate great compassion, they can join each other directly and influence each other directly. That is then called great compassion, observing phenomena. But you can do the same with emptiness, the emptiness of all sentient beings. Then it's called great compassion that observes the non-observable. Of course, it's observable, but sometimes emptiness is described as the non-observable because it's not observable, it's not perceivable by an ordinary mind, just an ordinary, everyday mind. It's not observable in that way. It's not observable in that way, right?
What do you call the first kind of compassion?
That focuses only on sentient beings, the great compassion that only focuses on sentient beings. The second time is called great compassion that observes phenomena. It's a little misleading. The term is misleading. It's not great compassion itself that observes phenomena. It is combined, or it is the person who has great compassion, because of their mind and great compassion, they have another mind that observes a phenomenon other than emptiness with regard to sentient beings. So it's only focused on sentient beings. So is that clear? Is that clear? Yeah, does that make sense? Not clear?
Is that the phenomena of impermanence that you just mentioned?
Yes. So phenomenon here means either impermanence or self-sufficient, substantially existent, the lack of a self-sufficient, substantially existent I, any phenomenon other than emptiness, right? So again, you have great compassion. In the first case, it's just great compassion. So what does the person focus on? The person now being labeled on the basis of that, the person mainly focuses on all sentient beings. Does that make sense? Yeah, Shubham, does that make sense? I know you isn't sister. Sorry. But anyway, does that make sense? You have compassion. Just compassion is active in your mind. But instead of generating compassion, first you focus on all sentient beings. How do they exist? Right? The understanding of, so let's say you've already realized subtle empowerment. You realize the lack of the self-sufficient, substantially existent I with regard to any living being. So now what you do is you focus on that. You generate the mind that knows all sentient beings are empowered, for instance. Or alternatively, you generate the mind that knows that all sentient beings lack a self-sufficient, substantially existing I. Right? And you know that, you realize that, you retain that mind for some time. But then, without letting go of that mind that knows the impermanence, for instance, of sentient beings, and not simultaneously, the lack of a self-sufficient, substantially existent I, all sentient beings, or anything else, the fact that they're in the nature of suffering. I mean, I don't think anything that is not emptiness, in other words, and that is important to realize. But usually they say actually subtle impermanence or lack of a self-sufficient, substantially existent I. Those are usually mentioned in the text. We realize that. So you get a very good understanding of the nature of sentient beings, impermanence, and that coarse type of selflessness. And then you generate great compassion, running parallel, both active at the same time. Seems impossible right now. Kind of like, yeah, doing one and not the other seems possible, but in this case, actually it is described as possible, and you don't have to be a bodhisattva yet to be able to do it. And when you do this, then that bodhicitta, that great compassion is called great compassion focusing on phenomena. It focuses, of course, on the suffering of sentient beings, on sentient beings as compassion itself, but it's directly conjoined. That is, it runs parallel with another mind that focuses on a phenomenon, which is impermanence, or the lack of a self-sufficient, substantially existent I. These two are core phenomena.
Is it good to say?
Pardon?
Is it good to say seeing others with the compassionate, with the view of impermanence?
Yes.
So it kinds of like having
An impact.
Impact rather than like thinking like two mind doing things in parallel.
These are two minds thinking that there are two minds doing their own thing, but they influence each other.
Okay.
You can't, if you have two minds that run parallel and they are both in accordance with reality, not like one is a wrong consciousness. No, they're both in accordance with reality. One is wisdom, which one is part of the wisdom aspect of minds, realizing permanence. One is part of the method, it's an emotional state, it's compassion. Then you combine method and wisdom, not that it becomes one mind, but they influence each other greatly. Right? So understanding the impermanence of sentient beings, then and then wanting them to be free from suffering, that also suggests it's possible to free sentient beings because they're impermanent. If they weren't impermanent, the suffering of living beings couldn't be removed, could it? So the fact that they're impermanent, the fact that they don't have an self-sufficient I, shows us what causes their suffering. Their misconceptions can be removed. And so it deepens our compassion because it's possible. Absolutely, it's possible to help them overcome their suffering. It's not just some kind of fantasy. So I'm not saying that in that moment you know that, but bringing the two together, when you arise, when these two minds are no longer active, you have a deeper sense of compassion as well as your understanding of reality. They influence each other. And the same goes for emptiness. If the mind that runs parallel to great compassion, this time is not a mind that perceives anything other than emptiness, knows anything other than emptiness, but knows emptiness, which is described as compassion focusing on the unobservable, or observing the unobservable, if you like. So that now the unobservable emptiness is said to be the unobservable. Now, of course, it can be observed, but not with an ordinary worldly kind of mind. So that now focuses on the emptiness of sentient beings. Again, unless sentient beings will lack inherent existence, they could change. If sentient beings existed inherently the way it appears to us, they could not change. No external phenomenon could influence them to change, because they don't depend on anything other than themselves. They just are. So they can change, right? Change is only possible in correlation to other things. Other things influence us. Other things, we hear about the Dharma and we decide to reflect on it. Previously, we didn't think we wanted to do it, but now we do. So if we existed inherently, no external influence could in any way have an effect on us, because we existed independently, almost like in a bubble, if you like. No change would be possible. So that shows it's possible, but of course, more than that, it shows that our root misconception, holding on to inherent existence, is a wrong mind, because obviously you can understand the opposite, and therefore can be removed. So again, our great compassion, it becomes clear to that great compassion which now runs parallel to the understanding of emptiness of all sentient beings, that it's realistic. That what I wish for is absolutely realistic. And anyway, when those two minds stop being active, you start thinking about it. Whoa, right? It becomes deeper. So these two minds are directly conjoined. But even if you can't do that, having them indirectly conjoined is also extremely beneficial. You meditate on one, let it go, meditate. So meditate on the emptiness of all, or the impermanence of all sentient beings, let it go. Then the mind is no longer active, realizing we're now going to great compassion. They still affect each other. They still affect each other. So a lot of our meditations, they affect each other. In fact, this is true for our day-to-day life. There are certain states of mind, they affect everything else we're doing. Now, usually I give a very simple example, but a powerful example. The more powerful, the more obvious it is. So I have a strong emotion, not great passion, but just an ordinary compassion. For instance, someone really close to you, near and dear to you, dies. And you're desperate. This person is dead. Now, your grieving mind is not always active. You're preparing dinner. You're on the phone. You're too distracted looking to someone for that grief to be actively there. But it influences your perception. Even the sky, however blue it may be, it seems grayish. Even the food that is your favorite food, that you usually indulge in, that you enjoy, but now it tastes bland, right? Because of the grief. So this grief influences your other experiences. But that's just the negative. Now the positive part, you just fell in love. You just fell in love with this person, and before all the mess starts, right? Attachment, can't be without them, don't look at someone else, kind of mess. No. Before that starts, pink clouds. Right here, monsoon, it's like raining, the sky is gray, the water's brownish. I took this morning. Kind of brownish water. It looks pink. It looks beautiful. Your least favorite food is blissful, right? So even though your mind thinking of that particular person is not always active, it influences your experiences, your ordinary experiences, especially if this is something you don't experience all the time. It's not like an ordinary state we have. It's just there for some time. And even if it were to continue on for longer, we get bored and, before long it dies down. But just that extreme, like, that happiness or something else, winning the lottery or whatever else, getting that wonderful job. It doesn't have to be being in love. whatever else gives you this high, it influences others. And that is not true for great compassion, our understanding of emptiness. Of course, it influences our actions. And if you start your motivation in the morning with this, it affects your actions in a very profound way. They're no longer neutral and meaningless. Many of our actions, making tea or, I don't know, meaningless means, of course, you may need to drink, but they're not like that important. Does that make sense? That sense of you bring the Dharma into ordinary activities. And again, if you do it in the morning, you're more likely to remember throughout the day. So whatever you do, you're wiping the water away. I do this for the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay, it's not like, oh, this is really going to help them. They're so much happier after I wipe the floor. I know that's not true, but it's just using the mind in a very effective way. Psychologically, that ordinary action of just wiping the floor becomes a Dharma activity, right? That is how we can use the mind. You don't have to go off into a monastery now or in some cave and sit there until, you die. This is just the external. The internal counts. You can sit in that cave and be resentful for the next 5 years. You didn't have to go to that cave. Because it's all the mind. The external can help the mind. For instance, being in an isolated place may be less distracting. Your mind is more focused on what you want it to be focused, but that's just a means to an end. It's mainly what you do in every moment. So you can do it anywhere. The Dharma can be practiced anywhere. Don't think you have to meditate from morning to evening. And sometimes it's just a matter of letting go of our attachment of having to do something. That's the first thing. We're so like 21st century, always do something. All right, and you focus on the Dharma, that's great. But sometimes, like when you're even a meditator up in the mountains, you don't spend hours and hours on meditation. You may spend hours and hours just sitting outside on your porch and looking at the world around you and reflect possibly on the Dharma, but also let go of this attachment of achievement, of having a tangible result at the end of the day. Because that's very much a 21st century kind of idea, right? I usually tell people on this occasion a funny story. One of my schoolmates, he was not a classmate, he was in a lower class. He eventually graduated from the IBD, but instead of going off to translate or teach or whatever, he decided to meditate, to go. I mean, he didn't really talk about it. He keeps it, but he doesn't say, I meditate. Because sometimes to say to meditate means you're a highly advanced meditator. So people don't necessarily say they meditate, although they do. It becomes obvious from their behavior to some degree, they know it better. But anyway, so he didn't really talk about it. He took a room somewhere, I don't even know where he is. And I remember sitting in a chai shop, in a tea shop near the temple with some nun friends. We were just looking people on the street, like just chatting. And he happened to walk past and he stopped and he said, Hi, how are you? We talked a little bit. And I said, So what are you doing? And he's like, Nothing. And I said, Nothing? And one of the nuns kicks me underneath the table. Kicks me. Oh, it's nothing. Great. I knew that was the problem, was my disappointed nothing. And I was like, oh no. Oh, nothing. Great. And he was like, oh, okay. Talked for 2 more moments and he took off. And then they were like, what? What are you doing? What's wrong with doing nothing? You also doing. I'm like, yeah, sorry, you're right. But it's again like, having that sense you have to do something. But here it's not about just sleeping all day long and no, it's about letting go of this attachment like to the I and achieving something, right? So kind of letting go of that and letting the Dharma become much more part of your thoughts, not having to think about achieving this and that and the other, just making the Dharma part of your life. Okay, so that's really what it means. But of course, it can be if you're too busy, it's very difficult to do two things at the same time, like especially something that requires your full attention to then think of the Dharma. Okay. But no one is saying you should give up that kind of life, because the life, the contemplative life may just not be the right kind of life for you. You may get bored and sooner or later come down from your little cave. Which is why it's better to take it slowly. And a very effective way is taking this motivation in the morning and retaining that throughout the day, remembering that, because there are plenty of opportunities when you're on autopilot. I don't know, you know how to drive a car, you no longer have to think, am I doing it right? What comes first, clutch or brake or whatever? You don't only have to do that, you do it automatically, brushing your teeth, so many other activities, and bring that to mind. And in that way, you bring the Dharma into your life in a very profound way. And of course, still spend time learning the Dharma deeper, gaining better understanding. Make that time, that's important. Do a course here and there, do a retreat here and there. But it doesn't mean you cannot live your normal life, right? I mean, whatever that means to each one of you. I have my own normal life and you have yours, without being able to be let go of that. So it's not necessary, as I said, to go into it. That's really important. And also do the practice like great compassion, of course, like the way I just described it. At times generate great compassion. Of course, it's on the way to generate a bodhicitta, you need to do it. But you may sometimes, especially when you notice, oh, compassion, I've neglected that a little bit. Well, you need to focus more. That it's not just, oh yeah, Buddha was great, and it's kind of for yourself, but it's really for sentient beings. So the focus needs to be on great compassion. Now you know enough about it to be able to generate it. And as I said, take it. It doesn't matter. Don't be afraid of it. Like when we do yoga in the beginning, we don't look like our teacher. And that doesn't discourage us from doing it. You can maybe just go halfway down, but okay, it's faith. It's not the real movement as you see it in the book, but you're moving towards it, and you don't hesitate to do it. You know quite well that it's not the final result, but you still can continue doing it. That's exactly what it should be doing here. And bring in wisdom, of course, empowerment. Spend time to reflect on that every now and then, especially when you notice, oh, I'm suffering from guilt. I'm holding on to the past. I'm holding on to permanence, therefore, bringing it in to the now as if it was still there. There's nothing wrong with going back and reflecting on what has gone wrong and then continuing and learning from it. But when we hold on to it as being right here, right now, then focus on the self-sufficient I. Does it appear to me? Were there times when it appeared to me? So bring in wisdom as well. And if you focus on great compassion, maybe a moment earlier, reflect on the impermanence of sentient beings. The fact that they don't have an owner-like I that could be recognized without having to recognize mind and body, which is another way of saying misperceiving or wrongly perceiving a self-sufficient substantiated system. Reflect on how that is impossible. And we can all do it. You all did it plenty of times. And then focus on great compassion. So you cannot do them simultaneously for now, but you still have that effect in that they influence each other, they enhance each other. And I sent you some material. I don't know whether it's already, I sent it to both of you. So either it's going to be sent via WhatsApp or via email. It's pretty much, it's not so much about compassion, because compassion doesn't require that much explanation. I did give you a lot, and hopefully it's clear in your notes or whatever you memory will serve you to remember and practice it. And of course, you can always look it up. There are plenty of texts explaining it. It's more focused on emptiness. So I gave you a more technical explanation of emptiness, like I described the object of negation, very technical term, but it's really what are things empty of? fully understand that. I spoke a little bit about independence, like there, of course, we can use the word independence. I use the United States. It is dependent on its states, it's dependent on its people. But we can still talk about independence in a certain way, like politically, it's political affairs and so forth in terms of that. So there's some explanations I haven't gone into much detail about. Say looking at things objectively, we discussed that here. Is water inherently wet or not? We can say it is, it's naturally wet, but we mean totally independent of anything other than itself? Of course not. So this is what we mean with inherent. So just to clarify that, and then some of the reasoning using a car, using a house, why nothing can be found on the side of the object independently of labeling. So it just goes over again, dependent origination, you find it in there and read through it, and that's exactly what I read through. And then you have, well, it starts with the 2 types of selflessness that I gave you yesterday. Then there's a big part on emptiness. And the last part is the meditation on emptiness put it together. Yes. That's about 25 pages. I didn't have that ready when we started, so you got it now. But I find with everything we've done, it's still hopefully fresh enough so that you can maybe benefit from it really fully. Okay, so there's that material. And now comes the last part, how it works with the path, the different levels. Once you have bodhicitta, and as I promised, it's not that complicated. Okay, now, bodhicitta, I think, is pretty clear. This is the entryway, as they usually say, into the Mahayana, which means as long as you have generated this mind and you haven't lost it in that it's no longer there, you can no longer generate it. So it may lie dormant, but you can access it anytime. So how could you lose it? Pretty simple. First, you want to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, and then a person annoys you, and you have the thought, not for them. What is the goal? All sentient beings -1, no longer all sentient beings, obviously. And there are accounts of the past when great masters lost their bodhicitta because of that, and they had to make an effort to again generate. But the kind of bodhicitta we generate here is described as contrived and artificial bodhicitta, in the sense that, yes, it is the mind that wishes to be enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, but it's based on contrived compassion. It's not the real deal, but because it doesn't arise spontaneously yet. We have to make an effort. We have to, go through a few steps of meditation to trigger it. It's not like uncontrived, which is uncontrived means it just pops up naturally. Every now and then, it's just there. It's a natural process. That would be uncontrived. So when it arises spontaneously, when you reach that kind of level, when it pops up again and again, just on its own, then we could say uncontrived bodhicitta, of course, driven by uncontrived great compassion and stuff. That's when you become a bodhisattva. And again, initially, you may lose it. Then again, you are bodhisattva, you're not, back and forth a little bit until it becomes stable enough, so that you actually, yes, you won't lose it easily. Anyway, so the point is now, once you have uncontrived bodhicitta, not only have you entered the path of the universal vehicle, you have also entered the first level. Bodhicitta marks not just the entry into the Mahayana path, it also marks the entry into the path of accumulation. It's called the path of accumulation. Accumulation is the name. Why accumulation? Because you need to accumulate all the causes and conditions to now move on to the next stage. This is when you have great compassion or bodhicitta. Great compassion comes before bodhicitta. Great compassion always precedes bodhicitta. The meditation, we did it, That's the order, that's the sequence. So let's say you do this many, many months, many, many years, however long it takes. One day you have this spontaneous bodhicitta. You may have to, of course, you still have to meditate on it. In fact, you have to strengthen bodhicitta and continue meditating on bodhicitta, even if you've entered the path. It's not like now I've got bodhicitta, I can forget about it and focus on something else. Unfortunately, no. Even when you've entered the bodhisattva path, you have to again and again reinforce it and strengthen it. Anyway, so what happens is you are on the path of accumulation now. All right. Now you have to accumulate all the causes and conditions to move on. Of course, on every level, you have to accumulate the path. So it's just the name that is given here, because the focus is more on accumulating mainly the causes and conditions to experience emptiness directly. Now, you could have realized emptiness already before you entered the path of accumulation. That's possible. In fact, it's encouraged to first understand emptiness, because we know that emptiness exists. You know that suffering can be removed. Why do you know that? Because then you know firsthand the mind that perceives the opposite of emptiness, inherent existence, is not in accordance with reality. Because either phenomena exist inherently or not. Both is impossible. Once you know they don't, then you know the mind that perceives inherent existence is totally wrong. Right now, you may believe that, but not know. So you're not just convinced, you know firsthand. And if you know the mind that perceives inherent existence is a wrong consciousness and gives rise to all the other mess, you know the mess can be removed. So it's not unrealistic. All the other afflictions can be removed. You know it's not unrealistic for myself to want to be free from suffering. Of course, I haven't really got this in with the meditation we did, like the wish for ourselves to be free from the 3 types of suffering. You remember? For other sentient beings, to wish for other sentient beings to be free from the 3 types of suffering, we need to wish ourselves to be free from it. So although it's not included in the meditation we did, but every now and then it would be good if we refresh that, right? How our ordinary experiences, well, we deprive ourselves of greater happiness because we're so attached to ordinary happiness in our ordinary mind and body. Anyway, the point is that it's actually better to realize emptiness before great compassion and bodhicitta. Said to be better, is said to be the person of greater spirit, of greater mental faculty, greater intelligence, should focus on emptiness first, because then they're convinced of bodhicitta, they're convinced it's possible, or really understand that it's possible. But if you feel like, oh, this is really taking a long time, I should focus a little bit more on bodhicitta, that's not a mistake either. So whichever comes first. It's not like you're not intelligent enough to do this. It's just, it's just a matter of choice. Let's leave the questions for now, unless it's a clarification, because otherwise I get off track and I still have to finish. So if you don't mind, if what I said requires clarification, go ahead. Otherwise, let's leave the questions towards the end.
Yes, maybe I'll just say the question and then you decide if you want to take it later. So, if somebody realizes emptiness first, then why do they have to work to generate compassion? Why you've realized emptiness, things don't exist inherently. Then why doesn't compassion automatically arise?
Compassion can't automatically arise because realizing emptiness conceptually is a very weak mind, and our misconception of reality is very, very, very powerful. So even though you realize at a certain point phenomena don't exist inherently, but to generate that mind again, it will not always be there, and everything appears to exist inherently. And if we don't really focus on emptiness in every moment, sense that phenomena exist inherently is much more powerful. In other words, so it's like, let's say you've ingested poison, you've ingested that poison for many lifetimes, and now you get a very tiny doses of an antidote. Yeah, it makes a slight difference, but then the poison takes over. It's multiplying. We're reinforcing our sense of inherent existence all the time. In fact, everything appears to exist inherently. Only the mind that experiences emptiness directly, that's the only mind to which inherent existence does not appear. Even to the conceptual mind that knows emptiness, emptiness appears to exist inherently. Even when you conceptually realize emptiness, emptiness still appears to exist to that mind. Only the direct experiencing mind doesn't have that mistaken appearance. So unfortunately, that mind can't really remove the poison. Important question. That's an important question. Yes, we have the sense, just as I can look into the cupboards, don't see the snake, but that's a direct experience. Looking into the cupboard is not a conceptual mind. With the emptiness here, we can't utilize our sense consciousnesses, which are the only experiencing minds we have at this point. So therefore, just a conceptual mind that knows emptiness, far too weak. Okay, to some sense, it's too weak, but it's strong enough to get us to generate love and compassion, to work on it. It doesn't arise naturally, but it's more effective when we generate bodhicitta and great compassion. So it does make a change. That's not underestimated. In Tibetan society, if you know someone has realized emptiness, just conceptually, whoa, they're a hero. So it's not like this is people realize it all the time. It's very, very rare, very difficult. However, unfortunately, and you'll see as we go along how difficult it is to remove the afflictions. Okay. Anyway, so it's this first realization, whether before the path of accumulation or not, the point is whether we enter the Mahayana path newly, which means entering the Mahayana path of accumulation, that is not determined by emptiness, and the realization of emptiness is determined by bodhicitta. Okay. Now, if you have already realized emptiness before entering the path of accumulation, the Mahayana path of accumulation, you don't need to worry about realizing it. But if you have first developed bodhicitta, have now entered the Mahayana path, now you need to focus on emptiness. You won't progress further to the next level unless you at least realize at the latest realize emptiness now. So you have a big job ahead, realizing emptiness. Of course, bodhicitta also help each other. So once you realize emptiness conceptually, first level of knowing emptiness, you know emptiness, not just convinced, you know emptiness. Now what comes next on the path of emptiness? You need to know that now this mind that realizes emptiness has to be strengthened. It's too weak. It lacks concentration. Remember yesterday I said it's like a candle in the wind, like glowing here and there. It doesn't provide any light, any light that lights up our misconception of reality and helps us to overcome it in that sense. So they use the analogy of a candle, which lightens up the room. In our case, our darkness of ignorance needs to be removed. So concentration, we need more concentration. We need to develop shamatha, the ability for at least 5 hours to focus on one object with the same degree of clarity and concentration. Can you wait?
4 hours.
4 hours.
Said 5.
Did I say 5?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I was like 4. Let's do 5.
Come on.
Yeah.
It's okay. Sorry, I misspoke. I thought I said 4. Yeah. No, not 5 hours. 4 hours at least. But 5 hours doesn't harm. All right. So anyway, at least 4 hours to have shamatha. And so actually yesterday I went through it too quickly. The way to usually do it is first you focus on something other than emptiness. You have to let emptiness go. You take a particular object, such as the breath. There's some movement here, right? In and out, at the very least. It's not just one object. there's actually a continuity. In, out, in, out. In, holding, out. So even in 3 stages, if you like. And so now that you generate first shamatha, a mind that is just focused on that, you could, of course, also take the image of a Buddha, seeing the Buddha. But then instead of focusing on emptiness, you start analyzing the breath. You analyze the breath. You engage in analytical meditation. Not difficult with the breath. I mean, how difficult is it? I'm not talking about the chemical blah and molecular blah that's going. No, just the in and out. Kind of spend some time in a gentle fashion to analyze it. Or the Buddha's body, for instance. Oh, this is the leg, this is the arm, this is the head. So you spend time focusing on it single-pointedly. Then you stop that as part of the same session. You move towards, same meditation session, you move towards analyzing these features. And then when your concentration wanes, when it's weakened because of your mind reflecting, you go back to focusing, right? So you switch back and forth, switch back and forth. The moment your concentration wanes, you go back to just focusing, let's say, on the Buddha's body, on that appearance. Yeah, it's not a tanka. You look at the tanka to then generate an inner image. Inner image. So the Buddha appears to your inner eye. Well, they have a better word. So you focus on it. The focus is strong enough. You realize, okay, enough strength, clarity, and focus. Then you analyze. The concentration wanes. For some time it remains, but then sooner or later it will weaken, go back. And you go back and forth long enough, which is alternating back and forth, eventually you're able to focus on the Buddha's body, analyze the different aspects nonetheless, with the same degree of concentration that you had when you previously didn't analyze, but just focused. Now your mind is like the still lake that I described that before. Still lake with a little fish underneath the surface, not disturbing the surface, because the mental movement is so subtle. That's what we want to achieve. That's called the union of calm abiding or shamatha and special insight, which means vipassana. So special insight means a mind that analyzes reality, but in a very subtle fashion, while focusing, while keeping that focus. You can imagine what powerful mind that becomes because of the concentration. But at the same time, it's also has this analytical aspect, that analytical function, both happening at the same time. And that becomes much more powerful than the initial mind just realizing emptiness and then being distracted. So the problem, and you need to do all this still on the path of accumulation. Because now, although you have the union of calm abiding and special insight, your focus is not emptiness. It's not emptiness. It's an object that you can easily know. Not difficult to focus on the Buddha's body. I mean, sure, it's not easy to keep the focus and all that, but in terms of the object itself, it's easily understood. All right, now you need to take emptiness as your object. Now the object is emptiness. All right, much more difficult. You focus on emptiness for some time, okay? Just emptiness. And now you shift towards analyzing it. Again, the focus weakens. And when you notice it weakens, you go back, alternating, back and forth and back and forth. Focus, analysis, focus, analysis. And as before, now or at some point, you are able to bring the two together. You have the same degree of focus while analyzing subtly, like the fish analogy. Now you can do it with emptiness. It's harder than with the Buddha's body, but you've already accomplished one. And now with emptiness, you can accomplish that as well. The moment you have a union of calm abiding and special insight, realizing emptiness conceptually, it's still a conceptual mind, but nonetheless, you've brought the two functions together in one mind, you have moved onto the path of preparation. Now it's the second level. You see? So the first level, you needed to realize emptiness unless you already had done so. Needed to deepen your bodhicitta. Yeah, of course, you have to still do all these other meditations, generosity, and what have you. But especially when it comes to emptiness, you need to realize that and generate calm abiding and special insight. Focusing first on something that's easily understood, that's easily done with, an object such as the breath or the image of a Buddha, and then transfer it to emptiness. And the moment you have a mind that is a union of calm abiding and special insight, now having the two functions of incredible focus, moral clarity, and that analytical kind of function of the mind in one mind, which we can all attain. It's nothing extraordinary. Well, it's extraordinary from our perspective, but we can all generate it. Then, by definition, you've entered the path of preparation. So, whereas for the path of accumulation, the criterion for generating it was bodhicitta, right? The wish to become a Buddha, the wish to actually go that path. Now the criterion has to do with wisdom. The union of calm abiding and special insight, the union of shamatha and vipassana, realizing emptiness conception. Now you've entered the path of preparation.
The word is karma by the
Calm. C-A-L-M. Calm, abiding. Oh, this is a weird word that's been used. That's another word for shamatha. So the mind abides calmly in a calm fashion, C-A-L-M, calm fashion on its object. So yeah, in Tibetan it's shime. Shi kind of means peaceful and or tranquil, and ne means abiding. So tranquil abiding or calm abiding, tranquil, calm. That's a weird word, but you see it so often that I don't want to change that word really. Yeah, but I think the union of shamatha and vipassana is probably better. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So that's a direct realization.
Not direct,
Yes,
conceptual.
No, okay.
No.
Only conceptual.
Only conceptual.
And that's in case we didn't have a conceptual understanding of emptiness before.
You always have like we're talking about someone entering the bodhisattva path from the outset. You didn't go through the Hinayana path first. We're not talking about that. Then things are slightly different, not important. We don't need to go into that. So someone who is for the first time entered a path, and that path is the Mahayana path, not the Hinayana path. They never entered that Mahayana path. So they never realized emptiness directly. No way can you realize emptiness directly if you've never entered any path and now enter the Mahayana path. You can't realize it directly. It's not possible. You need a certain type of wisdom, method, emotional state, and that emotional state, in this case, can only arise when your bodhicitta is strong enough, and you must have also, of course, gone through the path of preparation. Still conceptual. We haven't mentioned direct experience at all. So you may have realized conceptually emptiness before entering the Mahayana path, but you also don't have a union of calm abiding and special insight, conceptually knowing emptiness. That can only happen when your bodhicitta has enhanced on the path of accumulation, it's become stronger through your practice, but you've also then, in combination with bodhicitta, or under the influence of bodhicitta, you have generated shamatha, you have combined shamatha with vipassana, using another object other than emptiness, and then used emptiness. That's the procedure. You can't go any other way. You may ask why, but the explanations are too complicated to go into. It's basically the force of bodhicitta, the method part, the emotional part, needs to have enough strength for your understanding of wisdom, for your wisdom, which is here the wisdom of emptiness, to develop in the way I just described. So, calm abiding, or no, I should say shamatha and vipassana, the combination of the two. Now we're on the path of preparation. Preparation for what? For the third level, which is the path of seeing, where you directly realize emptiness. You see it. That's called the path of seeing. Again, has to do with emptiness. So now when you're on the path of preparation, you're on the path of preparation, which means you have, that's the criterion for the path of preparation, of the union of shamatha and karma. So the first moment, you have a union of shamatha and karma, shamatha and vipassana, conceptually realizing emptiness. That is the first moment of the path of preparation. That's your criteria. And now you still focus on, you can only ever take a particular type of emptiness to mind. Emptiness of the eye, emptiness of others, emptiness of table. You cannot focus on the emptiness of all phenomena. It doesn't work. The conceptual mind is restricted in that way. For instance, let's take the example of how the conceptual mind is restricted. With my eye consciousness, I can see this whole scene, right? And even if I just focus on the table, the surrounding areas appear to my mind, and I can pay attention to them. But if I were to say, close your eye and think of the table, really it's just the table appears at the exclusion of everything else, right? There may be a little bit of surrounding appearing, but that full image you have of what's in front of you, that disappears. If I ask you, look at the altar, right? Look at it, close your eyes, and think about the altar. No longer that vivid, full appearance. Because our conceptual mind, although it's not limited in time, it's not limited to proximity, it can take to mind anything, it lacks that clarity that a direct experience has, that full experience of the thing. It's very limited. And that limitation becomes obvious when you, as long as you realize emptiness only conceptually, it's only the emptiness of something particular. So you need to switch. Oh, my mind doesn't, my body doesn't exist inherently. You focus on that. Myself doesn't exist inherently. You focus on that. Other living beings. So you go into the meditation on emptiness again and again, and shift the focus of the emptiness, or the basis of the emptiness, which is still great. But what is very funny is that you will notice that things that previously didn't seem to be that inherently existent now seem to be more inherently existent. For instance, before we met Buddhism, our focus on the Buddha existing inherently wasn't very strong. We didn't even believe in the Buddha. So ourselves existing inherently, my pain rate rise, existing inherently, my family existing inherently, that was stronger. But when you come to the Dharma, and especially, now you have a conceptual understanding of emptiness, and only a conceptual understanding of emptiness, then emptiness seems to be more inherently real. Ignorance is less inherently real, something you want to get rid of. The Buddha seems to be more inherently real. The path seems to be anything that is more important to us. And our shift has changed. What used to be important for us is no longer as important. New things are more important for us. The teacher, for instance, whose wholeness becomes more important. So it seems more inherently existent. Right? It's quite interesting. And so on the path of preparation, there are also 4 levels, they say. Don't need to mention these. Don't need to go into nitty-gritty details. But part of going through these levels is dealing with these weird perception where you feel the mind exists more inherently than the object. Whereas, because there's more emphasis on the mind versus our ordinary life where the focus is more on the external world. The external world is not as important. The mind becomes more important. So therefore, the mind seems to be more inherently existent than the object. And since we cannot simultaneously, with a conceptual mind, know the emptiness of all phenomena, you need to shift and go, I just notice I perceive the Buddha to be a little bit more inherently existent than piece of cake. Okay, let's focus on the Buddha. And in that way,
you pay attention to which type of object seems to be more inherently existent, and you weaken it by meditating on that. So you're weakening our misconceptions actually in that way, without being able to really remove them. But we weaken that, at least we weaken. That happens on the path of preparation. But you want to, of course, and that's the goal, to experience emptiness directly. That conceptual mind is not enough. It's impressive, especially since it's now the union of karma, binding, and special insight. You're on the path of preparation. Amazing. But the path of seeing lies ahead, which means experiencing emptiness directly. Experiencing it directly. So that's the path of seeing. You see it. Previously accumulated whatever is necessary to see, then you prepared your mind to see, and now you want to move on to the path of seeing. Yes, you have a clarification? Yeah.
So the sense consciousnesses directly perceive emptiness?
No. And sense consciousness only a Buddha's sense consciousness can do that. Your sense consciousnesses are still limited.
It's too close.
Yeah. They're too coarse. They're very much dependent on your body, and your body changes to some degree as you progress on the path, but not that you suddenly see better or even see emptiness. No. Your sense consciousness is a sentient being, a non-Buddha, a sentient being will never perceive anything but sense objects. It's not like you perceive sounds suddenly with your eye consciousness. Not going to happen. Same object. So it's pretty much you're short-sighted, you're still short-sighted. But that's not important, because your sense consciousnesses, they're just allowing us to understand the environment we're in. They help us, of course, also receive teachings, be inspired by the actions of another person, but we don't use it to meditate. And it's not our sense consciousnesses that become the mind of a Buddha, it's the mental consciousness.
It's a clarification.
Just a clarification. Yeah.
The mental perception.
Yes, the mental. It's all the mental consciousness. Sense consciousnesses are not important now.
So even direct experience happens with the mental consciousness.
Just mentally. Yes. Of course, our sense consciousnesses are always direct experience. So we can't use them. They can only perceive sense objects. They're limited in that way. Yeah. So it's all mental. None of what I said so far has anything to do with sense consciousness. They're no longer mentioned. No longer relevant.
Yeah, clarification. So conceptually understanding emptiness, that could happen in some analytical meditation. You're like kind of getting it. There's like a gradual approach to like conceptually understanding it stronger as you go through the gate.
Let me explain, but let me continue to explain, because that. Okay, go on.
Yeah, and then I was going to say the experiencing emptiness is not perpetually experiencing emptiness. That could be really feeling it for a few moments or 2 minutes
Yes,
in a deep meditation.
I'm getting that. I'm getting that. So
So-
let me just finish and then it becomes clear. So anyway, as we're still on the path of preparation, now we're aiming towards that direct experience, right? Okay, Shubham, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Are you? Okay. All right. So that direct experience, we're trying to generate that direct experience. Now we have the concentration, we have an understanding of emptiness. It's just a matter of familiarizing further, again and again, entering meditation, arising again, entering, arising again. It's all conceptual. And with time, it's just a natural part of our mind that it will become, that emptiness will appear clearer and clearer and clearer. First, mixed with the generic image, but slowly the generic image will fade, and it will appear clearer and clearer until you directly experience it.
The emptiness of an object.
The emptiness of all phenomena. Now
Meditate on all phenomena.
it's just emptiness, and it's the emptiness really of all phenomena. So it's not like you have to. No phenomenon appears. Nothing appears other than emptiness. In other words, so it's really just emptiness, which is the emptiness of all phenomena. It's really just emptiness, and when only emptiness appears, it's naturally the emptiness of all phenomena. Right? It's just natural. Nothing else appears. So it's hard to put it into words. But previously it was just, okay, the absence of inherent existence on a table or something. But here it's just emptiness and nothing else. So your mind is totally absorbed into emptiness and nothing else appears. No inherent existence, nothing else, just absorbed into emptiness. It seems hard to believe, but yeah, and it takes some time to fully grasp that, and even harder, more time to get there. But just the sense, just emptiness appears. So now your mind is a non-dual mind, non-dual in that nothing other than the ultimate truth appears to your mind, nothing other than emptiness in that case. Okay.
In that moment.
In that, yeah,
Yeah.
of course. That mind, in that mind, your sense consciousnesses are still there, but they become inactive in that objects appear, but they're not known. You know, like when right now all 5 sense consciousnesses may be active, but you don't hear something or you don't feel something because your eye consciousness is active. In the case of full absorption into emptiness, your sense consciousnesses are not active at all. They're there. They're active in that they're there, but they're not knowing anything. They don't see something. You don't see anything. You're not aware of sights, sounds, and so forth. That's right. You don't know what's going on around you. Your mental consciousness is so strong. You're totally absorbed into emptiness for some time. I don't know how long. It could be a few moments, probably even longer than that, maybe some hours. Yeah, I mean, sooner or later you have to rise from it, you need to eat. But yeah, so for some time. And what happens with that mind? Now you start to eliminate coarser levels of the fundamental root misconception. Intellectually acquired, the one that is intellectually acquired. And any other misconception or any other affliction that arises from the intellectually acquired mind that holds onto inherent existence. What is that intellectually acquired mind that holds onto inherent existence? The mind that is not the one we're born with, but the mind that in this lifetime, yes, phenomena exist inherently, they really do, right? Like to do with our education, to do with our understanding, just intellectually we reinforce that mind and all the other misconceptions intellectually acquired that arise from that mind and all the emotions, they're gone for good. No longer, they're eliminated from that. They're eliminated that. The first time you realize emptiness directly with that mind, every intellectually acquired affliction is gone for good to never appear again. So it's a huge change. This is where you could say automatically something can no longer arise, right? So that's on the path of seeing. Then you rise from the path of seeing. There are, of course, other things you have to do when you're not in a meditative act, of course. That is, meditate on compassion, on love, on generosity, and so forth. That you have to do. Okay, so path of seeing, you've realized the emptiness directly. Then the next level is called the path of meditation. You have eliminated the intellectually acquired root misconception and all the afflictions associated with it. You've already moved closer towards liberation and enlightenment. But you still have the innate misconception, the one we've been born with, we've had since beginning this time, and that is more difficult to achieve. So bodhicitta strengthens the vacuum cleaner of direct realization of emptiness. So bodhicitta needs to be strengthened. Compassion, everything else needs to be strengthened because these method parts, they're like the electricity, the power of electricity. They give the power to that vacuum cleaner. So the mind that realizes emptiness now gets stronger. So that when again it enters into this direct perception, the first moment of that is now called the path of meditation. Why do we call it meditation? Meditation means familiarizing. So now you familiarize yourself with that direct mind. Previously, you once went into that meditative act, of course, you removed what had to be removed, you came out of it. So the path of seeing is relatively short. You only go into the meditative act, of course, once, into that absorption once, remove the intellectually acquired afflictions, and are done. Now you enter the path of meditation, and that's longer. Because now you have the innate afflictions, and there are many different levels of them. There's coarser, there's subtler. They sometimes give them funny names. 9 levels. Big, medium, and small. Each big, medium, and small has big, medium, small. We have big, medium, big, small. Medium, big, medium, medium, small. Small, big, small, medium, small, small. It's really weird. In Tibetan, it's Chenpo Chung, Chenpo Chenpo, Chenpo Ding, Chenpo Chung. Ding Chenpo, Ding Ding, Ding Chung. So it just sounds like as odd as it does it in English. So they don't give it like some fancy name that's difficult to recognize. It's just saying the coarsest, the 8th level of course, the 7th level of course, all the way.
Favorite song.
Pardon?
Favorite song.
Favorite song. Knock yourself out. That song. Right? So anyway, now you go into the meditative absorption, as Tyler said before, come out again, in, out, in, out. And every time you're in that absorption, a coarser level, first the coarsest level of the innate root misconception is eliminated, and therefore everything else that arises from it. So if there's a particular coarser innate level of grasping at inherent existence that would ordinarily give rise to a certain type of attachment, a certain type of anger, well, that is now gone. Because it potentially could give rise to those, but since it's gone, it can no longer give rise to them. So you eliminate level by level, you eliminate the root, of course, and by eliminating the root, all the other afflictions that are associated with that particular level, that strength of the root misconception is gone. So really, you're just removing the root misconception, but because it otherwise would have given rise to a certain type of attachment and anger, well, that's gone. And you're moving on to the subtler level. So your attachment becomes subtler and subtler. Or what you're left with. So the coarser levels are gone. Coarser level of anger is gone. Coarser level of anger is gone. Coarser level of attachment. And it becomes subtler and subtler. You're only left with subtler and subtler versions. And the path of meditation is divided into 10 levels. They're dependent on these different levels. And it's a little complicated, don't need to go into it. On the 8th level, you removed all 9 levels of the afflictions. You're now liberated. Now you're liberated. No longer any afflictions, but more work to be done. So short clap and let's move on. So the point is, on the path, the step, the 8th level, and that has also to do with the perfections. The first level you focus more on generosity, the second level more on moral discipline. But even without going into these details, just focusing on emptiness here. So moving through the levels based on the level, the kind of absorption that now eliminates one of these different levels. So you eliminate step by step until the 8th round, as it's called, the bhumi of the Bodhisattva, on that is all part of the path of meditation, until actually the first bhumi starts already on the path of seeing. But never mind, I didn't want to make it too complicated. But definitely also the path of meditation is divided in such a way. So on the 8th bhumi, when you're on the path of meditation, you've eliminated all misconceptions of reality, gone, right? There's no longer any mind that perceives inherent existence. There's no longer any mind that perceives impermanence. There's no longer, so you really close to a Buddha. For us, this person and a Buddha, we couldn't see the difference. It's pretty close. I mean, they're an arhat, but they still have very strong compassion, incredible compassion, and bodhicitta, of course. And they have only now left the smell of the garden, the obscurations to omissions. That's all that's left to remove. And
This is an arhat.
now they're yeah, by definition, you can call them an arhat, or another word is foe destroyer, because the foe, the enemy here, the foe or enemy, F-O-E, foe or enemy, is the afflictions. And those afflictions are gone. So this person is now a foe. All the afflictions have been gone, have been eliminated. There's no affliction left. You're not. Clarification.
Yeah. I thought you were like reborn is in our heart. Now it's kind of like a different being, but you can just become one in your human body, and then you're like, you realize this, and like, yo, you're in our heart now.
Well, let's not go into these details. Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
This is too.
Fine.
Like, what do you have? How are you born? This is all very, very complicated.
Okay.
Let's just keep it simple, as in like now you're in our heart on the 8th ground.
Okay.
If I had more time, I would definitely go into more detail, and it is important, absolutely. We just don't have the time because I have to finish at 20 past.
Mhm.
So that means
Sorry.
I keep checking.
Isn't it 9th level?
Pardon?
9th level?
Wait. We're on the 8th level. We're on the 8th level. So don't be too quick. We're on the 8th level. Okay. So on the 8th level, you are now on. You've eliminated with your mind realizing emptiness directly. You have eliminated all the afflictive emotions. You've eliminated the afflictive obscurations, as they call the obscurations to liberation, and now you liberate. Now the question is, why do you continue? Why does your mind realizing emptiness directly not stop here? Bodhicitta hasn't reached your goal yet. So, but why does someone who has entered the Hinayana path, when they become an arhat, why do they not continue? They didn't want to in the first place. They didn't aim for Buddhahood. They aimed for becoming an arhat. They became an arhat, right? And they're going to remain in that state for some time, for a long time possibly. That's why it's a detour to go through the Hinayana path. Because once you reach your goal, you're first going to be absorbed into that goal, like into that blissful state of liberation. In the case of a bodhisattva, that is just a stopover, right? Great, well done, move on. Remember, one of you was clapping, just a short clap, move on, work to be done. So therefore, they don't stop there. They move right on to reach their final goal, because the mind is so determined to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. And the bodhicitta on this level now is so strong, has become so strong, it's become stronger and stronger, that now the realization of emptiness has enhanced to such a level that not only can it remove all the afflictions, which it has already done, now it can remove even the subtlest residues on the mind. Previously, it couldn't do it. It could only remove coarser levels, and then it became stronger and stronger. It could go deeper and deeper into these afflictions. And now it's become so strong through the course of bodhicitta and compassion and so on, that it can actually start to remove every time you go into that absorption. It has become so strong, this absorption now, in assistance of the bodhicitta, that it starts removing other parts. And now you move on to the 9th level and the 10th level, right? Removing all the obscurations. And the last time, as a bodhisattva, you enter into the meditative backward voice, removing the subtlest obscuration. Then you never arise from that again. You remain in that absorption, you're Buddha. And now you can be in that absorption on the emptiness, but at the same time realize all phenomena and communicate into everything else, which you couldn't do as a bodhisattva. As a bodhisattva, you're in that absorption, you can't go out and do other things, right? You can't communicate or anything. You're in that absorption. So the last time as a bodhisattva, in that meditative session, you eliminate the subtlest obscurations, and in that meditative session, you become Buddha, but you remain mentally in that state. You never arise from that, but at the same time, you physically rise from the meditation, and you're now Buddha, and you can benefit sentient beings. That is the 11th ground, and now you can really flag. That's Buddha. So you're done. Buddha. All that can be achieved is achieved. You've totally purified your mind through the direct realization of emptiness. All gone. So see, there's a lot more complications of this. There's a lot more, there's much more to it. But actually, in a few words, it took me half an hour to explain it, right? You have a bit of a sense, going back, path of accumulation, have realized emptiness or not, hence, but if you haven't realized it yet, conceptual realization needs to take place. You need to practice your mind in the union of calm abiding and special insight, initially not focusing on emptiness, but then training your mind in the union of shamatha and vipassana, conceptually realizing emptiness. And once you achieve it, you're on the path of preparation. But being a conceptual mind, you can only focus on certain types of emptiness. So you're not focusing on all emptiness. So here you pay attention to which type of inherent existence seems to be stronger. So the inherent existence of the Buddha or the mind, you deal with that. But you also make a point in again and again, meditating on emptiness again and again and again, until at some point that conceptual mind that relies on a generic image becomes so clear that the generic image disappears and you have the direct experience of emptiness. Seems weird, right? How could that even? But that's a little hard to fathom. But if you accept that, okay, you realize emptiness directly for the first time, you reach the path of seeing. Directly see, you directly experience emptiness. Not literally see, but they use the word see also in Tibet. See. And you remove the intellectually acquired rude misconception, and therefore any other afflictions that could potentially arise from that intellectually acquired rude misconception. So that's one time you only enter into that because it's easy to remove. It's just in this lifetime you've developed it. So that can be easily removed. The difficulty lies with the innate ones we've been born with since beginning this time. They're like, if you have a carpet, the crumbs from this morning, you can easily, suck in. But the ones that are really deep have sunk deep into the fabric of the that's why I use the vacuum cleaner, right? You have these long hair kind of carpets back home, and at least in our living room. So this morning's kind of crumbs you can easily get rid of with a vacuum cleaner. But to go deeper, you need to actually put up the power and go a little further. So that's why I think the mind realizing emptiness is so much like a vacuum cleaner that still needs power, that still needs certain tops that you apply to be more focused. So similarly here, you've now reached the path of seeing, haven't eliminated anything intellectually acquired, any new afflictions basically from this lifetime. Now you need to go into the old ones, into the ones we have had since the beginning of time. And you enter the path of meditation. Again, that absorption, that first can only remove the coarsest level of the innate afflictions. But then if you rise again, you deepen bodhicitta, you deepen your method practice. And then that way your mind realizing emptiness becomes stronger because they're enjoy, they influence each other. You can tackle a deeper level now. And again arise and deeper until the subtlest levels of all the obscuration, of all the afflictions are gone. And now you're an arhat. You've reached the 8th ground by now. And all that is left that on the 8th, 9th, and 10th ground, you now need to tackle the very subtle obscurations to omniscience, which are like the smell, the residue that still obscures your mind, that still is responsible for the appearance of inherent existence. Phenomena still appear to exist inherently. The only exception is the mind that realizes emptiness. It still appears. You know they don't exist like that, and it still appears. It's like this mirror image is not you, and it still appears to be you, right? But you're not fooled by that. Actually, you don't believe in that appearance. Similarly here, where you know it's not true, so you no longer believe in that appearance, but it still appears. So it's likewise here in terms of inherent existence. So that's because of the obscurations. There's still obscure the mental consciousness, the sense consciousness, everything. So more works to be done. More can be removed from the mind. And every time you go into the meditative absorption again, a deeper level of the obscurations is removed. And when the last obscuration is still there, you enter the meditative active voice as a sentient being, as a non-Buddha, the last time, you never have to arise from it because you remain in that meditative active voice. But it's not just emptiness appearing to your mind, everything can appear to your mind now. All phenomena appear to your mind. every living being's past, present, and future, your own past, present, all that appears to your mind. And at the same time, you can teach exactly according to their needs. It's spontaneous. No intent, you don't need an intention to do so. You spontaneously are just there for all living beings. You know exactly what to do. You're driven by incredible love and compassion. You have this endless wisdom and understanding of everything and can now teach people, beings in the most effective way. But you cannot remove their suffering. It's now their job to practice what you tell them or not. That's unfortunately the limitation of Buddha has. But from the side of from the side of the living being, this Buddha now, they do the best job they can. And that is Buddha. That is the 11th ground. That is Buddha, but that's the enlightened state of the Buddha. And in that way, I mean, the personal experience is beyond words. The bliss, the peace, the inner peace. So definitely you benefit greatly from it. It's not like, oh, now you suffer, everyone else benefits from you. No. You reach the greatest benefit. Your Dharmakaya, your own mind that no one can perceive is your own personal benefit. But then the body that you manifest, your speech and so forth, that's for the benefit of others. So there are qualities that mainly benefit you and qualities that benefit others. That is the goal. Right? And you can be anywhere, you can do whatever you want to do. It's not about like, oh, now I can no longer do this, that. I mean, now, sky's the limit, basically. Okay, great. That's it. Done. Okay.
Teacher,
So, yes.
then Buddha, the tenth movie has the 11th movie. The 11th movie is when Buddha had
Yes.
station in himself. It is achieved.
Yeah, that's achieved. There's no longer any better or greater. Sometimes it's described as the 11th stage, and that's it.
But the 10th then is the final plunge that he takes before he goes into
the 10th, you're still a bodhisattva.
And you take that final plunge to remove the final
Yes,
of the
so
God.
on the 10th level, you enter the last time into the absorption. You're still on the 10th ground. And the moment they're eliminated, these last, then you're no longer on the 10th and you're no longer a bodhisattva. The moment you've achieved the elimination of that. Yeah. Okay, great. If you have further questions, unfortunately, we won't be able to answer them. Let's just take the last few moments and dedicate whatever virtue you've accumulated. So we do the dedication prayer as we did before. And then on the next page, I think I can say that verse 483. That looks like my handwriting. I don't know where's that.
I don't know where.
I won't stress now that Anyway, never mind. It's not important. But this is a beautiful prayer from Nagarjuna's precious garland. So let's do a short meditation on page first 31 and then 33. So 31, we do the ordinary meditation as we usually do, or dedication, and then we go to page 33 and do this last prayer from Nagarjuna. All right, so let's take a moment to take to mind not just today's positive potential, but the positive potential we've accumulated all through this course. So again, thinking, may it not get wasted by, either by being destroyed through anger or by ripening into an insignificant positive experience, but rather may become a cause for all of us to go through the levels, the path of accumulation, path of preparation, and so on, until we finally reach the level of a Buddha, for the benefit not only our own benefit, but most importantly, for the benefit of every single sentient being. And of course, may our merit, may it also become a cause for all our great lamas, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and all other wonderful realized beings, to have a very long and healthy life so that they can continue to guide and inspire us. So with this in mind, let's first recite the usual dedication prayer. May the precious bodhicitta arise, not yet born, regenerated, may never diminish, but increase more and more. May the realization of emptiness arise, if not yet born, regenerated, may never diminish, but increase more and more. And then the prayer of 33. Like earth, water, fire, and wind, like medicinal substances and wild forests, may I always be utilized by all sentient beings unceasingly and as it pleases them. Just as their own life is dear to sentient beings, may sentient beings be even more dear to me. May their ill deeds ripen onto me, and my virtues without exception ripen onto them. As long as any sentient being anywhere has not been liberated, may I remain in the world for the sake of that being, even if I have attained highest enlightenment. Right. Okay, wonderful. So take good care. And
Can we take a half an hour break and come back at 11?
yes, we'll be doing. Okay, I'm going to see Geshema.
Right. And
Okay.
then have tea and then we come back at 11.
Oh, so we do meet again. Okay,
Yeah.
great. I just have to.
We're not going to say bye so soon.
Pardon?
We're not going to say bye so soon.
Not so soon. Okay. I thought Sophie had to leave. I know.
Except, I think,
Shabbat.
Yeah,
Shabbat.
she had to leave. She